the Black, or the Center for Black Digital Research. And our co-host for this entire symposium is Kristen Mariah from Queens. And there she is waving at us. We are coming from the North American continent, from the places where Shadd Cary lived and worked. And we're also thinking through ways to convene digitally, as well as across the globe and across North America, instead of having a symposium that was going to be held, part of it, at the Queen Theater in Wilmington, Delaware. Some of you are now familiar with the Queen Theater. Instead of us dancing as the last part of a 2-day-long symposium that included scholarly panels and archivists coming together and a tea to think through the questions of Shadd Cary's legacy. Instead of that, we have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris at the Queen almost every day now, making announcements. So we are happy to be displaced in that way, although certainly we're sending our best in a time of COVID, which has sent us to Zoom today. It has provided some real opportunities for us as well. This is our second event of this series. It is hosted by the Center for Black Digital Research, but also by the Colored Conventions Project and the Black Women's Organizing Archive, which my colleague Shirley Moody Turner will talk about in a moment. Shadd Cary was not only a pioneering woman, as Kristen will tell us a little bit about, which most of you know, but she was also one of the very few women delegates in the Colored Conventions movement, which lasted 7 decades, and really advocated for voting rights, and for educational rights, for Black newspapers, and she and her family were central to that movement. They were also central to Black women's organizing. And to talk a little bit about that, I'm going to hand over the proverbial mic to my colleague, Shirley Moody Turner, and then to Kristen Mariah to further greet you and introduce the work that we're doing today and the ongoing work that we're doing as well.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Dancing Shadd Cary's Activist Legacies. I am Shirley Moody Turner. I'm co-director of the Center for Black Digital Research, Dig Black, with Gabrielle Foreman. And I want to start just by giving a quick word of thanks to everybody who has worked so hard. We'll do this at the end, but it never hurts to give multiple thanks and show appreciation and gratitude for everyone who worked and lead up to this, behind the scenes producing it, and all of the amazing artists, scholars, and participants who have come here today to share their work and their artistry and their imaginations with us. We are so grateful for that. And thank you all for joining us as well. As Gabrielle mentioned, we are really excited to be part of this event today. This is part of our build-up and launching of the Black Women's Organizing Archive. And like the Colored Conventions Project, the Black Women's Organizing Archive is committed to highlighting the work of Black women in our organizing histories and to moving Black women writers, artists, activists, and intellectuals unapologetically to the forefront of our recovery and Black digital history and public history projects. It's women like Shadd Cary, who was both part of the Colored Conventions movement, but who also, as Dr. Foreman mentioned, was central to women's rights organizing and women's rights issues, and carried out that work through her work in newspapers, organizing, her speeches, her protests, and it's her legacy that really lives on in the work and the contributions of the women who are here with us today. With the Black Women's Organizing Archives, we work in collaborative partnerships with community arts organizations, academic institutions, and repositories throughout the U.S. and Canada to document the scattered records of 19th and early 20th century Black women writers, intellectuals, activists, and organizers. These partnerships lead to greater access to the work of Black women through digitization projects and transcription projects and public events like this, in which we get to engage critically and creatively with the foundational figures of Black women's organizing. We will be recognizing the 200th anniversary of Mary Ann Shadd Cary's birth with our 2023 Douglas Day, which is an international day of radical love for Black history, in which we come together to to transcribe papers that have been digitized of prominent and foundational figures in Black organizing. So Mary Ann Shadd Cary will be the subject of our 2023 Douglas Day. Frances Harper, poet, educator, suffragist, activist, will be the subject of our 2025 Douglas Day to recognize the 200th anniversary of her birth. And last year we did Anna Julia Cooper in partnership with the Moreland Spingarn Research Center, and we're able to transcribe her papers and digitize her papers. This year, which we'll come back to at the end to say a little bit about what's coming up this year, but we will be featuring the work of Mary Church Terrell and transcribing her papers. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end and share what exciting opportunities there are to get involved there. But we just wanted to say welcome from the Black Women's Organizing Archive. And we're just so excited to be here and to be part of this event. This really encapsulates the ways in which we imagine honoring the legacies and the work of the women whose papers we seek to bring together and to digitize and to broaden access to. So thank you so much for joining us. And I am going to turn it over to our colleague, Kristen Mariah.
Well, I'm going to be Kristen for just 2 seconds before I turn it back over to her, just to talk a little bit about the ways in which arts activism and arts education has been central to the ways in which we think about engaging historical figures and the ways in which centers and Black communities have come together through culture over time. And no one has been more of a convener than Dr. Lynette Overby, who we have worked with for 2 years. She has put together an incredible performance on Mary Ann Shadd Cary, which was going to be at the Queen Theater, but also is engaged in arts education. And this work has really emerged today, and the oral histories we'll hear about more through her work. She'll say a little more about that, but I did want to come back and stage the fact that this is 2 years of work with communities, with young people who are dancing, with performances all over Delaware, but also abroad that we're showcasing and sharing today. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. Thank you, Shirley, and thank you, Gabrielle. It is my great honor and pleasure to be chosen to introduce Dr. Jane Rhodes today. And it's incredibly fitting that we have Dr. Rhodes here with us to toast Mary Ann Shadd Cary and Black women who follow in her footsteps and who are leaders in fields like education, law, politics, journalism, and the arts. Dr. Rhodes' research on Mary Ann Shadd Cary and Black history in Canada and remains influential in the field and has provided a model for scholarship in the field and for Black Canadian scholars like me. And her biography of Shadd Cary remains the gold standard on the subject over 20 years after its publication, even as it provides a basis for new research and reminds us to be mindful of Black women whose incredible contributions are often forgotten. In the acknowledgements for Mary Ann Shadd Cary, the Black press and protest in the 19th century, Jane Rhodes explains that while chatting about the history of African-American journalists with Manning Marable, he complained that few knew about the legacy of Mary Ann Shadd. It was at that point that Jane Rhodes, a Black woman journalist anxiously seeking her predecessors, began researching Shadd Cary and pursued that work during her journey from journalist to scholar. And we're so lucky that she did. Dr. Rhodes' work sheds a bright light on the role that Mary Ann Shadd Cary played as the driving force behind the Provincial Freeman, one of the first Black newspapers in Canada. Dr. Rhodes' insistence on the importance of this dynamic woman is also an important reminder of the significance of Black journalistic work today. By reading Dr. Rhodes' scholarship today, we come to understand Mary Ann Shadd Cary's role in a long line of Black women journalists that includes Ida B. Wells. Dr. Rhodes' work also reminds us that Marian Shadd Cary is the foremother of contemporary Black journalists like Nicole Hannah-Jones. And thus, in the excitement and dialogue on Twitter, as I'm sure we all are today, surrounding Black journalistic work like today's 1619 Project, we see shades of the buzz, excitement, and criticism that surrounded Marian Shadd Cary in her own day. Dr. Rhodes' work bridges gaps, crosses borders, and speaks to us in fresh and clear ways that I think make Marian Shadd Cary's life and work feel present for us today. It inspires me in my scholarly practice, and I'm thrilled that she has joined us. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing introduction. I'm not sure if I can live up to it, but I want to thank you, Dr. Mariah, and Dr. Foreman in particular for inviting me to participate in this amazing event. Back 25 years ago, when I was just starting my research on Marian Shadd Cary, as Dr. Mariah said, no one knew who she was. Literally, I was looking for a foremother. I was looking for some indication, and there was virtually no information other than a very brief mention in a book about Black women's history by Dorothy Sterling. And some of my colleagues in the room probably still remember that text. And I never imagined that her history and legacy would be taken up in this astonishing way in terms of the symposium and these programs, the digitizing process. In hearing all of you speak, particularly Dr. Moody Turner, I'm incredibly envious. When I did this project, I was digging through dusty archives. I was reading microfilm. I was literally trekking physically all over Canada West to find the bits and pieces of her story. And the work that all of you are doing is bringing this to light and making it available to multiple publics. And that is going to make an enormous difference in elevating the story and the history of Black women. I was indeed one of Shadd's daughters. I was a journalist. I was in a world that was mostly white and mostly male, and I was desperately seeking a predecessor. So I want to thank all of you for really creating an environment where her legacy and her predecessors today can be recognized and have a voice. So because of that, I want to raise a toast to Marian Shadd Cary, her family, and those who followed in her footsteps, and to this remarkable event today. So I hope everyone takes a moment to just think about what this means, particularly in this historical moment. And thanks again.
As we toast to Marian Shadd Cary and to her descendants, we also want to think about her antecedents and her grandmother, who was one of the first Black women entrepreneurs who had a tea shop in Wilmington, which is one reason that we are using our teacups to toast to her today. She came from a long legacy. She passed on a long legacy. And we also want to take a moment to toast Jane Rhodes, because without her work, without the work of those who wait for so long for others to come to pick up the mantle, to be icebreakers, we wouldn't be able to pick up this opportunity to build on the work of Marian Shadd Cary in the same way. So we invite a second toast at this moment to Jane Rhodes. And with that, I hand over this to Dr. Lynette Overby.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we're so pleased to be able to be a part of this program today. As Gabrielle said, my name is Lynette Overby. I'm Artistic Director of the Sharing Our Legacy Dance Theater and Professor in the Department of Theater at the University of Delaware. This is our second symposium event on the life of Marian Shadd Cary. And today you're going to see a video of a performance based on her life. After the video, you will see and hear the results of an oral history project of contemporary women who we feel are living her legacy. This part of the program will include choreographed quotes, connected to Shadd Cary's life as an educator, lawyer, community organizer, and editor. This section will be followed by a panel of 3 of our Shadd's daughters. And then our program will conclude with an excerpt from the performance, the live performance of the Shadd Cary, Her Life and Legacy. We're going to begin where we ended in the last symposium with a dance to the poem Torchbearer, danced by Emily Jabouin, poetry by Glennis Redmond, and music by Ralph Russell.
Because A.D. and Harriet believed that I could do anything, and being their eldest child, I believed them. They passed the torch of abolition to me. I took it without hesitation or fear. Because fear is an emotion not worthy of feeling or following. So I followed in my father's footsteps as he wrote for The Liberator, and later I published The Provincial Freeman. I broke editorial ice, went where no woman had gone before. Yes, it was cold and lonely, but I felt compelled as a story gatherer. What better way to inspire our people than with our own hardships, struggles, and triumphs? I pointed many people north to Canada as I could. Even with this frigid temperature, it is warmer anywhere where Black people can be free. Better a few shivers than your life. This is the fire I keep alive. Pass from my family. I pass the torch. I let it spread, let it leak to the masses, because education, reading, and staying informed is walking toward freedom. See the light? Once you are warmed by it, you will never go cold again, and you will know your worth. Keep stepping and heading in that direction. I work tirelessly because racial uplift is noble but heavy work. I wore as many hats as I could while doing the lifting: teacher, lawyer, publisher, and abolitionist. Because Quaker beliefs were embedded in my soul, I did not act alone. It was not a solo effort, but I never tired of loving my people. I gave my mission my whole heart and mind, because self-reliance is the fine road to independence. I believe it is better to wear out than to rust out. On June 5th, 1893, I laid my head down for the last time. But torchbearers always make sure the fire and the path is lit. I left a clear path so my people can see the way to get from here to there.
We will now share with you a performance that tells the story of the life of Shadd Cary through a video slide presentation. The performance was a work of several poets, composers, choreographers, performers affiliated with the Sharing Our Legacy Dance Theater. So Gabrielle Foreman and other members of the Color Conventions Project provided the company of creators important background history and materials. We utilized Jane Rhodes' book very, very much. This film was produced by Sierra Watkins and narrated by Michelle Peoples, and the performers are members of the Sharing Our Legacy Dance Theater.
Shadd Cary, Her Life and Legacy. Mary, born free, did not have to endure slavery. However, she fought for the rights of enslaved and disenfranchised African Americans. We will now look at a reflection of Shadd Cary's legacy throughout her lifetime. In 1800s Wilmington, where Marianne grew up, playing fun games was an important part of her childhood. However, it was also a time when education opportunities were denied to African American girls, and that was not okay. Thereafter, Marianne and her family moved to Pennsylvania, where there she was educated. During that time, her papa was a leader in the colored convention movement, and her family provided a stop on the Underground Railroad. Her father inspired her. He was her inspiration. The fugitive slave law made it a challenge for free and enslaved African Americans to feel safe. The law was passed by the United States Congress on September 18, 1850, as part of the Compromise of 1850 between Southern slave holding interest and Northern free soilers. Abolitionists nicknamed it the Bloodhound Law for the dogs that were used to track down runaway slaves. Oh no, this law did not deter the African Americans. They were determined to survive and to stand strong in unity together. After the fugitive slave law was established, Canada became a refuge for many African Americans, including Marianne's family. Even Canada was not without its challenges. There was also a challenge that Mary had to face: the fear within herself. But Mary overcame the challenges and became the first African American woman to serve as editor of a major newspaper, the Provincial Freeman. On June 30 of 1855, she wrote, "To colored women, we have a word. We have broken the editorial ice, whether willingly or not, for your class in America. So go to editing, as many of you are willing, and as soon as you may. That's if you think you are ready." At the 1855 Colored Convention, Mary spoke plainly when she stood and told of the evil acts of slavery. She was not alone in her passion on behalf of the people. Oh no, other women overcame their own adversity and stood together in the fight for freedom and equality. In 1871, along with several other forward-thinking women, Mary attempted to register to vote in Washington, D.C. That's right. The women went to their nation's capital to register to vote. Even though they did not succeed, they made sure to get an official signed affidavit recognizing this action. Oh, yes, they did. And just as Mary did, our superwomen led us from fear to empowerment, from the unknown to wisdom, from suppression to expression, from following to leading. They give birth to freedom within us. Take a moment and think about a woman in your life who overcame barriers and who is super to you. Together, our legacy is super. We hope you have enjoyed this and learned about Shadd Cary, a truly remarkable woman. We hope you will live out her legacy and pass the baton of empowerment to everyone you encounter, because together, this is our legacy. Shadd Cary.
Good afternoon. My name is A.T. Moffitt, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Delaware's Biden School of Public Policy and a member of the Oral History Research Team. There are women around the world living out the legacy of Shadd Cary. The research team focused particularly on women in Delaware, where Marianne was born, and in Canada, where she and her family moved after the fugitive slave law was enacted in the U.S. While conducting the oral history interviews, we were so moved by the eloquence and passion of these women's stories that we felt inspired to create a film that captured meaningful excerpts from the interviews and expressed them through dance. This film is both an archive of the living legacy of Shadd Cary and an expression of gratitude to the women we've come to call Shadd's daughters.
Mary Ann Shadd Cary was born free in 1823 in Wilmington, Delaware. Throughout her life, she advocated for the dignity and rights of all people, and especially Black people in Canada and in the United States. She was a pioneering educator, recognized as the first Black woman newspaper editor in North America and the first Black woman to enroll in law school in the United States. Her legacy continues. Today, we have phenomenal women amongst us that picked up the baton she passed to us, making a difference in their communities and beyond as educators, editors, community organizers, and lawyers. We honor and recognize these women as Shadd's daughters. Education. Mary Ann Shadd Cary was an educator in the United States and Canada. In Westchester, Pennsylvania, she established a school for African American children. In Canada, she taught at a school in Canada West, then established an integrated school in Windsor. She also taught in Pennsylvania, New York City, and Wilmington, Delaware. When she was in law school at Howard University, she also served as principal of the Lincoln Mission School, a night school for freed people, and the 2nd District Grammar School in Washington, D.C. Shad Elementary School in Washington, D.C. was named in her honor. In our time, those we have identified as Shadd daughters have made important contributions to the education of both children and adults. For Mary and them, it is not just about providing the academic training. It is also about improving the perception of people of African descent in their own minds and the minds of the larger community. Susan Brown is also an extraordinary woman. At the age of 102, she is active, vibrant, and full of life. Her dedication throughout the years to educate children goes beyond measure. Susan moved from teaching at Booker T. Washington, a segregated school, to Fairview Elementary School, an integrated school, in 1966, overall completing 30 years of service to children. Susan Brown.
In segregation, and as you accept what you have, and so therefore integration was a little difficult to accept at first, but after all, you learn to accept it. When they moved me from Booker T to an integrated school, well, it took quite a good bit of adjustment for me, as after I was grown and I had never had anything like that, so I had to adjust to the children, and it took me a while, but I adjusted. The only thing I can remember my first day at school is that all the teachers were standing at the door to greet their students, and most of the students, I had but one family that I think they objected, but anyway, looked at me and started crying. The little girl came on in and sat down at the desk. Then I discovered that the little girl she was in 3rd grade, but she couldn't read, so I taught her to read, and the mother was very happy about that. That was my first time of teaching integrated classroom.
Shannon Prince is the curator of Buxton National Historic Site and Museum. Her museum leadership and public speaking background is extensive. Having preserved Black Canadian history with the National Historic Sites Alliance for Ontario, the African Canadian Heritage Network, and Tourism Ontario's Underground Railroad Alliance, among many others. She is also a Shad family descendant, part of the family who came to Canada for freedom and opportunity and continued to make their home there. Shannon Prince.
First started working at the police station though, because again, I was the only Black person there. All the officers were white, and I didn't think anything of it. And I don't know, I was working one day and I was taking some reports out to one of the officers, and I overheard one of them say, well, she only got this job because she's female and she's Black. And I turned and I said, what do you mean? And he said, no, I think that's the only reason why you got it. And again, I think that that Shad came out in me, because at the time, the office I was working in, the superintendent of the entire region was in our building. So be danged if I didn't march upstairs, went by his secretary, walked in, and I said, excuse me, superintendent, I just overheard something. And I said, did I only get this job because I'm a female and because I'm Black? And he said, no. He said, because you had the best scores. And I said, well, some of your officers have are then under the impression that that's the only reason why I'm here. And I said, I would like you to rectify that. And I'd like you to send out a memo. And he said, okay, I will. And I said, I want you to send it out now. Not okay, now. And I was really ticked. But again, when I went back downstairs, got behind my radio, and I said, what the hell did I just do? Here I am walking in on this man who could fire me in a minute. But I was just like, in that moment, it's like, no, you don't be going around saying stuff like that. And then saying, it's like, whoa. Yeah. So from then on, it was interesting, because whenever I had the respect now.
Rosalind Green currently serves as president of the Delaware chapter of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, where she routinely gives presentations on African American history and genealogy, teaching and inspiring others to research their own family history and genealogy. She also taught high school chemistry and currently tutors children and adults in chemistry and math. Rosalind Green.
That's the legacy that I'm leaving, letting people know that we have a very rich history and we need to be proud of it. And we need to hold our heads up high and not be ashamed. Just letting people know, not only our people, but anybody else who will listen, that we have a very rich history in this country and we need to be proud of it and we need to research it. And I don't care if your people worked in the fields. I have some people who were some ancestors who, like I said, contributed very significantly to history. Well, to me, I don't care if your people worked in the fields, if they or if they, were servants in people's homes. You left a legacy. I mean, the Bible says the one who serves is the greatest of all.
Editor, journalist, writer. Marianne overcame many challenges and became the first African American woman in all of North America to serve as editor of a major newspaper, the Provincial Freeman. On June 30 of 1855, she wrote, "To colored women, we have a word. We have broken the editorial ice for your class in America. So go to editing, as many of you are willing, as soon as you may. That's if you think you are ready. Lo and behold, Shadd's daughters are ready. Lynette Young Overby, a native of Delaware, is a woman who wears many hats. Her prestigious silhouette includes numerous degrees, such as bachelor's, master's, and a PhD, which has led her to many leadership roles. Dr. Overby is the author or co-author of over 60 publications, including 14 edited, co-authored, and authored books, including the co-authored text, Undergraduate Research in Dance. She has a record of over 100 major presentations and performances. Her contributions have earned her more than 20 state, district, and national awards and honors, including the 2018 Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Dance Education Organization. Lynette Young Overby.
So I would say yes, I've definitely come up against closed doors, places where, kind of looked at me and not giving me, the opportunity because of who I am. But I try not to let those kinds of things hold me back. Because I think that if you, you set goals, you work towards them, there's a way, there's another way, there's more than one way. Surround yourself with people who care about you and that you can work with. And know that there's always a way. There's always a way to achieve the goals that you set for yourself.
Eternity Martis is an award-winning journalist and editor based in Toronto whose work on race and gender has been featured in Huffington Post, Vice, The Warist, and many more. She is the author of the moving bestseller memoir, They Said This Will Be Fun: Race, Campus Life, and Growing Up. It powerfully shares an experience so many of us survive, being a Black woman at a predominantly white university. Eternity Martis.
I'd like to pass on that writing is a form of resistance, and not all of us can be on the front lines. Not all of us are comfortable doing that or speaking out in those ways. But I think history, time and again, has shown us that when you write, no one can take those words from you, but also that at this time when speaking about things is getting you silenced, whether you're punished, harassed, killed, writing is so important. Putting that onto the public record of your experience, whether it's an experience of racism in the workplace or experience with the culture that we live in, is incredibly important for not just yourself and putting yourself into this, this moment in time, but to inspire other generations to do the same.
Community organizer. Marianne Shadd Cary stood up as a community organizer and suffrage activist on behalf of all women, even though African American women were often left behind. Along with other women in 1871, she attempted to vote in the United States Capitol, Washington, D.C. Our present-day community organizers are making a big difference in lives of all people, and especially African American men and women. Ray Jones Avery has contributed to the nonprofit health, education, and cultural arts sectors throughout her career in a range of volunteer and professional roles. As the former executive director of the Christina Cultural Arts Center, she has been one of the original driving forces in the establishment of Wilmington's Creative District, which extends from the Central Business District into neglected low-income neighborhoods. Ray serves on the board of directors of Kumba Academy Charter School and the Wilmington Urban League. She is also an accomplished singer and performer. Ray Jones Avery currently serves as president of the Delaware chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. This organization established the Marianne Shadd Cary and the Margaret Rose Henry Civic Engagement Program to target Black women statewide for leadership development. Ray Jones Avery.
Meditation, reflection, and some art form I think is absolutely critical, whether it's writing, whether it's music, and one does not have to play music because these art forms have healing properties. They absolutely bring about a healing, and when you're involved in movements, you need a healing every other day, right? So that's some of the advice. I would say cherish the friendships that are made through the movements. The people that I have the most stringent disagreements with are my closest friends. Yeah. And cherish those relationships and sustain those relationships. Once those bonds are formed, they're lifelong bonds, and that's an important part of movements, not just the cause, but the relationships and the love and the bonding that takes place, and it's life-changing.
Senator Elizabeth Lachman represents communities in the central and west Wilmington areas, one of the most diverse and densely populated districts in Delaware. In addition, Senator Lachman is vice chair of the Senate Education Committee and serves on other committees including the Correction and Public Safety and Transportation Committee. Recently, Senator Lachman was a leader in the establishment of the Arts and Culture Caucus, dedicated to greater understanding of the importance of arts and cultural offerings in Delaware. Senator Elizabeth Lachman.
I feel a big part of my work as an elected official is to help people to understand the processes and systems that serve us and how to make sure that they better serve us and get people to be more engaged with those systems. So I hope that I can do things to continue to build power in communities that we've come to know as being very disempowered. That's my priority. It's a responsibility that I take very seriously.
Bibi Ross Coker, a graduate of Morgan State University. Bibi started her career in public service as a social worker in Los Angeles, California Department of Public Welfare. She later moved to Delaware and continued her work of service for the state of Delaware. Her dedicated advocacy for welfare recipients, public education, and civil rights of so-called minorities is impeccable. For nearly 60 years, Patrice Bibi Coker has been a leading civil rights and education advocate in Wilmington, Delaware. Bibi was recently selected as one of the top 10 Women of the Century from Delaware. The list was published in USA Today, August 2020. Bibi Ross Coker.
I'm not making light of laws, but I am saying that anybody that was as blessed as I was, I can't sit here and lie and say, oh, these things beat me down. No. We lived with it. Actually, we acted like we didn't even know it existed. So there were water fountains. It was colored water, it was white water. Come on, water was the same. The only difference between theirs and ours was, one was refrigerated and one wasn't. But we would do things like go over and drink out the white fountain and just fall out laughing. I did not grow up in what you might call economic wealth, but I grew up with a lot of literature, a lot of education, a lot of teaching of your history, who you are, what you're supposed to do.
Law. Marianne was the first Black woman to be admitted to a U.S. law school, entering the first full class at Howard Law School in the late 1860s. In 1883, at age 60, she completed her degree and was admitted to the bar. She practiced law in Washington, D.C. Our Shad daughters have been pioneers in various aspects of the law profession. Paulette Sullivan Moore was born in Wilmington, Delaware in 1951. Miss Moore graduated cum laude with departmental honors from Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts, and from Rutgers University School of Law in 1976. Upon passing the Delaware State Bar examination, Miss Moore became Delaware's first Black female lawyer. In 1990, she achieved another historical first when she was elected Newcastle County Recorder of Deeds, becoming the first Black person elected to a county-wide office in Delaware's largest county. In addition to holding elected office, Miss Moore's career includes serving as Deputy Attorney General in the Criminal and Family Court Divisions of the Delaware Department of Justice. Paulette Sullivan Moore.
I wanted to be an educator. That was my plan. I had, as I said before, brilliant educators. I just applauded them. I applauded what they pulled out of students who were using second and third hand textbooks and outdated textbooks. And, so they had us reading the newspaper and, and they were bringing in their own newspapers because a lot of households didn't, have newspaper subscriptions. I just remembered how wonderful they were and how wonderful they made me feel. And I wanted to be able to do that. And I thought that would be my contribution to planet Earth. And so when Juanita was talking about going to law school, I said, if I go to law school and then I become a teacher, I could probably be on a school board. I ended up becoming an attorney, I think a piece of it, because the first time I heard lawyer was one of my teachers kept calling me a Philadelphia lawyer because I was always like speaking up for classmates, no, he didn't really do that, or she didn't really mean to say that. And I had never heard the word lawyer before. I was in junior high, and he said, you're just a Philadelphia lawyer. What do you have to say, Philadelphia lawyer? And so that was wonderful. It was, there were so many benefits from living during a segregated time that poured into me.
Camille Nelson is an outstanding member of the legal community. She is a Canadian-Jamaican law professor and the first female dean of the William S. Richardson School of Law at the University of Hawaii at Mona. Previously, Camille served as a professor of law at Maurice A. Dean School of Law at Hofstra University, a Dean's Scholar in Residence, and visiting professor of law at St. Louis University School of Law. Dean Nelson's scholarship focuses on the intersection of critical theory and cultural studies with a particular emphasis on health law, criminal law, procedure, and comparative law. She was recently named one of the top 35 women in higher education by Diverse Issues in Higher Education magazine, and listed by the National Jurist as one of the most influential people in legal education. Camille Nelson.
One, I think the first thing is you have to take care of yourself and your own mental health and well-being. I think it's Audre Lorde said, self-care is not self-indulgence. It's a matter of preparing yourself for political warfare. And I have to remind myself this, it's not about me. It's often about them and what's going on with them. It's like they're responding to me, how my black skin, my dreads, me being a woman. So that's their issue. Like, I can't let that live within me. That's what kills us. I mean, that's why we drop down dead faster than almost anybody else, right? So I think the first thing is for us to be anchored in something that can be our salvation and keep us healthy and whole, and then try to work with these folks as best we can without letting them puncture our souls, and reminding them why we're doing this.
Our Shad daughters have carried on her legacy in Canada and in the United States in the areas of education, community organizing, journalism, and law. Many of the women broke boundaries in their fields, and like Marianne, are serving as torchbearers by providing a clear path for young people to get from here to there. Shad daughters, we salute you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deanna Roberto, and I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Delaware's Biden School of Public Policy and Administration, and a member of the Shadd's Daughters Oral History Research Team. Thank you all for being here today. It's my pleasure to introduce you all to our panelists for today, who are three of the narrators interviewed for the Shadd's Daughters project. Paulette Sullivan Moore, the first Black woman to become a Delaware lawyer in the state of Delaware. Shannon Prince, a farmer and curator of the Buxton Museum in North Buxton, Ontario, Canada. She is a descendant of the Shad family. And Rosalind Green, a former chemist and educator and current president of the Delaware chapter of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. Thank you, ladies, for being here today. Before we get started, I would like to invite the audience to ask questions towards our panelists in the chat. Like Marianne Shadd Cary, you three women have made important contributions to the fields of law and education and to the advocacy of African American communities. Can you please describe the work you do or have done and how you perceive that work to be connected to the legacy of Marianne Shadd Cary? I would like Ms. Paulette to answer first, followed by Shannon Prince and Rosalind. Paulette, can you please respond?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Diana. And I'm zooming in from Wilmington, the home of Marianne Shadd Cary. It was interesting. I, like her, have had a lot of jobs. when I was an undergraduate, I could not figure out what to choose as an area of study. And a very wise and very irreverent professor suggested to me that I choose anything because I could then do whatever work I wanted to do. And I discovered that he was so absolutely correct. I've said to people before that becoming a lawyer in today's time was like becoming a secretary in the 1920s. It's a very transmutable profession. So I've done a lot of things. I think of myself as a policy person, the kind of person that employs political and social structures to achieve social advances that humanity really needs. In that regard, I've primarily held governmental and nonprofit positions, either as an attorney at legal aid or a state prosecutor or a parliamentarian and counsel for legislative bodies. I've been a policy director and vice president for state and federal legislative advocacy groups. And I've successfully run for elected county-wide office and represented litigants in private practice. I've practiced before every court in the state of Delaware and before the Federal District Court, Third Circuit, and U.S. Court of Supreme Court. I was especially thrilled to learn that Shadd Cary had testified before one of the U.S. Judiciary Committees. During my time working in Washington, D.C., I spent many hours with staffers and members of both the House and Senate Judiciary Committees while advancing one of the iterations of the Violence Against Women Act. In terms of professional legacy, there are now more than 80 women who comprise the professional support group Black Women Lawyers of Delaware. And that group of Black women includes judges in every Delaware court, including our state Supreme Court. I suspect that finally, in terms of personal legacy, I've been absolutely blessed and honored to be able to brag that I begat the incredibly amazing Ashley S.K. Davis.
Thank you so much for your response, Paulette. Now, Ms. Rosalind, can you please respond to the question?
Yes, thank you, Diana. I am coming to you from Wilmington, Delaware. I'm at heart a teacher. Even in my work as a chemist, I always had the desire to teach others what I'd learned. When I was a chemist, my target was my colleagues, but when I decided to leave the practice of chemistry and go into the classroom, then I shifted my focus to the children in my classroom. I'm mostly retired now, but I still tutor children and adults one-on-one and help them learn and gain confidence in their skills and ability to perform whatever the subjects I'm teaching them. I currently serve as president of the Delaware chapter of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. And to do that, I educate myself. My desire is to teach and inspire others to research African-American history and genealogy and their family history and genealogy in particular. And once I've taught myself, I turn around and teach others. And I do that by speaking at meetings and conferences. I write and I collaborate with others to produce something that can then help others learn more about African-American history and genealogy. And it's necessary, and I really believe it's necessary, because many of the books on this topic have left us out or marginalized us, our contributions, or misrepresented them in a way that has allowed others to feel comfortable making fun of us and treating us as less than inferior or less than human. I am committed, and the organization that I belong to, OGS, is committed to correcting the national narrative, on what we as a people have done and who we are and what we have accomplished. And I'm very passionate about that. So I connect my work to Shadd Cary this way. She was a teacher and a passionate advocate for issues that she believed would improve conditions for people of African descent. And in order to do that, she spoke, she wrote, and she collaborated with others.
Thank you, Rosalind. Thank you both for your powerful contributions to the advocacy of Black communities. The work you've done has helped to create pathways for future generations of Black women to succeed. Can you please share what advice you would like to leave for the youngest generation of Black girls as they continue to navigate race-based and gender-based oppression? And Ms. Paulette, would you please respond first?
Sure. Thank you, Diana. I tell those absolutely amazing young people to be bold, to dream big, to fly. And then I tell them to encourage their children or somebody else's children to be even bolder, to dream even bigger, and to fly even higher. I think I also tell them to remember that to whom much is given, much is also required, that one cannot be a successful human being if all of your boldness and bigness and flight only benefits you and yours. I really believe that we are our sisters and brothers' keepers, and that each one of us is absolutely required, like Shadd Cary, to work for the greater good. I think in retrospect, some of my most important life opportunities emanated from volunteering as an attorney guardian ad litem for teenage girls in foster care, as a reading assistant for a young man in middle school, as a tennis instructor for women in prison, and as an assistant to a volunteer elementary school chess instructor. And I think finally I tell them that every job you take on doesn't have to have a prestigious title to broaden your understanding of the world or yourself. My jobs, for example, when I was in college and law school as a waitress and a dishwasher, did much to inform who I became as an attorney and a policymaker. I tell them to dig deep and go for it. Don't back down. Don't minimize yourself. Congratulate yourself every step of the way. That's what I tell them.
Thank you so much for that insightful advice. Ms. Rosalind, can you please answer the question?
All right, I would say to the young women, know who you are, learn who you are, and do it in a way that brings honor to yourself and to your family. Learn who and where you came from, because much of that has helped shape who you are today. And I want you to be confident in who you are and go out and do what it's been given to you to do. Don't allow the negative images of others discourage you or cause you to think less of yourself. And seek mentors and feedback from those you know have your best interests at heart. That will help you to grow into who you have been created to be, and to accomplish what it's been given to you to accomplish.
Thank you for your wisdom.
Yeah.
And
Shannon Prince is back on the line.
Thank you. Ms. Shannon Prince, we are right now asking, can you please share what advice you would like to leave for the youngest generation of Black girls as they continue to navigate race-based and gender-based oppression? Can you please answer the question, Shannon?
Sorry, Shannon, we're not hearing.
Hello?
Here we go.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Hello? Oh, thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, can I, and I do apologize, I don't know what happened because I could hear everyone clearly. And anyway, I I'm going to skip. Can I do the first question now?
Yes. If you, yes.
Okay. If I have, I'll do it quickly, and I want to echo everyone's sentiments about participating today. I think it's a wonderful tribute to Marianne as well, and I too am very blessed and honored to be teaching and inspiring people every day as a curator of the museum here in Buxton. And we are very fortunate to have so many original artifacts, one which includes one of the printing presses that belonged to Marianne Shadd that she used when she lived here. And it's really fascinating is because our museum is very hands-on, and I encourage them to pick up the shackles, you know, to touch things, to get that perspective of what it was like to feel it. And so I allow them to touch the printing press as if Marianne was, you know, scrolling down, you know, the plate on it. And it's just amazing to realize and to see the awe in people when they really, you know, I give the background and to tell them that this is actually hers. You know, she printed articles on it, this fascinating, controversial, you know, intriguing, determined, outspoken woman. So it just really is something for them to behold. And one of the other things that we also have here, when she lived in the house just outside the settlement here, she had a box. She had quite a few letters and other correspondence, some between her husband, William Still, So anyway, we were fortunate enough to be able to get scanned copies of those letters, and we're sort of in the process of transcribing them now. And actually, the road in front of the museum is named after her dad, Abraham Doris Shadd. And I don't know how many were aware, but he was one of Canada's first 5 Black men elected to any political office in Canada in 1858. And I also had the privilege of portraying Marianne in a play called Rainbow and Wings. And it really took on another perspective for me, really deeper into her life, because it was about the John Brown convention that he held here in Chatham, and not the dispute, but the camaraderie between John Brown and Marianne that they had. So it was a wonderful experience for me. And I think because of AD's firm belief in, you know, education, and I think that was the basis for Marianne, because her motto, self-reliance is the true road to independence. And to me, that was one of the stepping stones because of her background from her dad, AD. And that motto, I think, resonates with all women from demographics. And when I share the stories with them, you know, her triumphs, her passion, her courage, her enthusiasm and her freedom, and it triggers something within them. And it's one of those, oh, wow, moments. And I can just imagine, you know, the light bulb almost goes on in their heads, and you can just see the greatness that is percolating. And to me, you know, Marianne, with a simple pen and the fortitude to overcome the barriers of gender and race, she rewove the Canadian tapestry, you know, designing a community where all colors intermingle to form a magnificent mosaic. And I think that she would be very, very proud of the rich legacy that she has left, which is deeply embedded within our community. And I'm just very honored to be here today. Now, my advice, as one of those strong-willed women, one of the things that my grandparents always said to me was to honor and respect your elders, because they are a fountain of knowledge and youth, which I truly believe. And I really didn't realize or respect that until I was growing up and much older in life. And it is so true. I would advise them to be resilient and to use your voice, you know, love yourself and be brave, be bold, and follow your passion. and reach for the stars and never let anyone tell you that it can't be done because you are standing on the shoulders of greatness. I would like them to basically act today to impact tomorrow, because believe in yourself, because change begins with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that powerful wisdom. Now we're going to move into the question from the audience. And one of the questions that was asked was if you could all give your initial reactions to the performances that we saw earlier, the dances to your quotes, and what your initial reactions were watching those. And Miss Paulette, could you please respond first?
Well, I thought that they were all absolutely wonderful and powerful, and I love how Dr. Overby and all of the students and my daughter and all of the other dancers really get the fact that the cultural is political.
Thank you. And Rosalind, it's the same question. What were your reactions to seeing the dance applied to your story? And what do you see as the power of bringing creative expression to your work as a Shadd's daughter?
Well, I loved it. I could see the connection between what I was saying and what she was dancing. I think there is a power. I mean, as a teacher, you learn that there are different learning techniques, and one of them is movement. So you've got visualization, and you've got this what you're hearing. So I think it's a good way of putting the message, leaving a greater impact of a message in a person's mind. So I loved it. And I loved all of them, really, yes.
Thank you. Shannon, I'm not sure, were you able to see the pieces or from earlier?
Unfortunately, no, I wasn't, because I had to leave my computer to go into another room. So no, I didn't, but I'll have to look at them later.
Yeah, we would love to know what you think.
Yes, I'd love to see them.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. Paulette Sullivan-Moore, Rosalind Green, and Shannon Prince, thank you so much for your contributions to the Shadd's Daughters Oral History Project, for your answers to today's questions on this panel, and for your contributions to the advocacy of African American communities. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed hearing and seeing the interpretations and explorations of the life and legacy of Marianne Shadd Cary. We're going to leave you with one of the works from the performance, the live performance. And this piece was choreographed by Marianne Hammermish. I know she's one of our audience members here, with poetry by Christian Wills and music by Ralph Russell. And these are some words that she put together for us to say prior to the performance. Marianne Shadd Cary, excuse me, was a woman of many talents and passions. Throughout her life and every endeavor in which she was engaged, she had to push against boundaries that had been placed in her way. In spite of these struggles, she succeeded in crossing lines and breaking barriers. As jazz musician Kendrick Scott Oracle discovered, sometimes a wall becomes a bridge, crossing lines, breaking boundaries.
over the line. Time passes and the wave crashes on top of time. With a new law passed, fate was clear. Freedom was never truly free. Even toward the north under the golden star, they were bound to gravity by the south. As many were roped, chained, and enslaved, one soul made way to escape the injustice and was able to tell her truth. She became the movement of a generation, outspoken with written syndication for liberation of black and brown bodies that bleed and believe in the freedom they seek. She became their voice, their spiritual uplift, unearthed the unjust spirit of the wicked, all in an attempt to save her people, bound to the higher northern lands of Canada. She spread news of journalistic views to America, hoping to wake her up, open her eyes to see that black individuals are more than alive, but were people who could thrive. Despite the opposition, the mission was clear. Oppression could not silence or claim her. She overpowered the oppressor through words unheard. She overcame the injustice with a movement unchanged and went over the line in a land unbound to limitations. Yes, she truly went over the line. She overcame the injustice with a movement unchanged and went over the line in a land unbound to limitations. Yes, she truly went over the line.
That was an incredibly powerful way to end this event. And I'm just so excited to see all of the conversations that are happening in the chat and to really think about the way that these women's work is now being sort of given light again. I want to thank so many people who've joined us today to help sort of celebrate these women's achievements. It's been incredibly moving. It's been an honor to be joined by Jane Rhodes, and it's always a pleasure to learn from Dr. Lynette Overby. I'm grateful that Shannon Prince, Rosalind Green, and Paulette Moore were able to be with us today to share their work with us and to tell us how Shadd Cary's legacy has impacted them. We have so much to be thankful for in terms of our dynamic production team. Kevin Winstead, Dada G. Green, Denise Berger, Jen Asasi, Mark Kepler, Brandy Locke, and Rick Daly. And this event represents the kind of collaborative organizing effort that I think Shadd Cary would be proud of. I think that we all owe Lauren Cooper an incredible round of applause. None of this would have happened today without her, and it certainly would have been impossible without her tireless organizing efforts. I'm going to send it back over to Gabrielle Foreman, who's going to tell us a bit more about the upcoming events.
Hi, everyone. If I could be unfrozen from the... Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here together, and Black women have had to learn how to dance our ways through so many circumstances, historical moments. So to see our words expressed through dance, to see the legacy of Black women and of Shadd Cary expressed through movement is a powerful attestation to the ways in which we have moved throughout history with finesse, with power, with vulnerability, and within community. So I want to thank all of the dancers from Seoul and Dr. Lynette Overby for their tireless work in inclusive community building through arts education and through dance as a way of honoring the kind of cultural legacy and the historical movement building and movement of Black women. So thank you. This is part of an ongoing set of conversations that we're having about Shadd Cary in the context of so many other Black women who have done powerful work as models of the powerful work that we continue to do in communities today. We will be talking to archivists, people like Shannon Prince, who is here today, archivists at the Moreland Spingarn Center for Black Culture and Research at Howard University, where Shadd Cary again was the first Black woman to enroll in their law school in the very first year that Howard actually launched a full class of Black law students. So we'll be bringing people together across small and large repositories to think through the ways in which we can digitize their words, the records that have been, and the artifacts that have been so lovingly preserved. When we work together in collectives, all of the scattered records of our history that have been isolated in various locations and cared for there can be aggregated so that all of us can think through ways that we can access them and build on them. So we would like you to reserve March 25th for our panel, Papers Worthy of Patronage, Gathering the Archive of Shadd Cary. We'll then go on to scholarly panels to really think through the ways in which Shadd Cary's work is connected to other, again, activists, intellectuals, thinkers, and movements. And this will be under the direction of Dr. Christian Mariah, who will then edit those and make them public in a special issue or in an edited collection, either of which we think will be the first to actually recognize Shadd Cary in that way. I want to remind you that Douglas Day is, again, Mary Church Terrell's papers will be digitized on Douglas Day, which is February 12th through 14th. This year, we ask that you join us at douglasday.org to think through that organizing. And we really want to take up the question that was asked, I think by Irene Moore, but it may have been by someone else. What are your hopes for sustained ongoing attention to Mary Ann Shadd Cary's story and impact that has been really building in momentum through the Google Doodle on her birthday, October 9th, but also through this symposium and through the work that so many others have been doing for so long. As we move to 2023, to the 200th anniversary of her birth, in your communities, who do you want to plan with, think with? We had a wonderful comment about the sculpture which will be unveiled next year in Canada. How do we think through ways to organize around events and the hard work and movement building again of people who have been engaged in this work to come through in 2023 with sustained and connected local and North American tributes to Mary Ann Shadd Cary. We ask you to follow us on Twitter at DigBlack and at ccp_.org, where you can keep track of so much. And I will just really hand this over to Dr. Mariah to have the last word and to see if there's anything I left out. But we love being in community with you and with the antecedents and the people who came before us and with the people who will come after us. And it's that multi-generational movement, which we saw through Dr. Overby and A.T. Moffat and Sharing Our Legacies work today, and all of the work of Mary Ann Shadd Cary's daughters that allow us to be in collectives together. Dr. Mariah.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. It's a tough act to follow, but I'm going to say again, I'm so excited by seeing all of the connections that people are making in the chat, by seeing the way that our virtual environment has allowed folks from all over the world, all the way from South Africa, to be in conversation with us, and to help us think collectively about ways that we can sustain this engagement and excitement about Mary Ann Shadd Cary and her work. I want to again say that we're looking forward to seeing so many of you join us again on March 25th and thinking more about how we can sustain the engagement with Mary Ann Shadd Cary to recognize the work of Black women in our communities today and to make those connections between her legacy and the work that we want to see in the world. So thanks, everyone.
Can we just have the IT team and DigBlack Studio come on so that we can see your faces and acknowledge the labor that you've done? We just want to really to be able to call your names as Dr. Mariah did, but also to see your faces. Thank you again for your labor, all of the hours that goes into this work, and for your undying commitment to making things work, to making a way out of no way, right? As our ancestors have taught us to do. Thank you.
And thank you to all of you. I'm just going to ask, I know some of us are going to stay on the line, but if we could please have 20 seconds of silence just for the recording purposes. Thank you.
Hey everybody, across the world today, something is moving.